What's going on, guys? Welcome to my review of Dune, which I have to say I saw in IMAX on opening night, and what a treat we were in for. Dreams are messages from the deep. That reads the title card at the very start of the movie. It's a quick insight directly from the book. It makes us kind of understand that the visions that Paul Atreides has while he's sleeping aren't actually memories, but there's something much, much bigger in scope. Now, the narration comes from Zendaya's Fremen female Chani, who explains that her planet, Arrakis, produces spice, which has a magical property and is worth a fortune. It's been ruled over by the Harkonnen, but they have been instructed to hand over power to House Atreides. Now, the first thing I want to make sure is that we're all on the same page in terms of what this movie is. This isn't Dune, but rather Dune Part 1. The original film in the 80s, and that film covered actually 2 books. This film barely covers the first book. So that's how much depth we've got in this movie. And that allows for a much better setup and world building. The film director, Denis Villeneuve, has been building up to this epic story with the amazing film Arrival, which I thoroughly enjoyed, with Amy Adams and Jeremy Renner, and the outstanding Blade Runner 2049, which I thought was outstanding. So what's special about this film is that Dune succeeds at transcending the most difficult parts of the novel into an enjoyable, approachable sci-fi epic film at a scale far beyond Star Wars or Star Trek, and to the level of Game of Thrones. Now, we understand noble houses, signs, betrayals from the get-go. However, the main issue for some might be that this might be something that they don't really follow. In other words, they really haven't seen anything in regards to Dune whatsoever in the past. Because they might not be following the law, there's so much to take in here that going in cold might be an issue for some viewers. I said this to a few people yesterday, actually, and to them, it might not feel like a sort of epic story. It might feel like half a story, although we know that there's much more to come, but unfortunately that's the way it is, that's the way it's portrayed. Now, the 80s movie took the story much further, not to mention The Children of Dune in 2003. That was set 17 years after this story, which was on terrestrial television. So you can see why many viewers are more involved than others, and for them this is a classic science fiction film. Now, sci-fi fans are in their element right now. We have the grandfather of sci-fi stories in the 1940s Foundation series, which is on Apple TV now. You can view that if you've got access to it, which is where everything all started from. And you've got the 1960s father of sci-fi, which is Dune. So Dune is a story of Paul Atreides, the son and heir to House Atreides, which is engaged in a complex political power struggle with another house, the villainous Harkonnens. Now, everyone is fighting over control of the desert on the planet Arrakis, or better known to us as Dune. And the colour scheme of the people works to show how the noble houses and have their privileges as royalists. And on the planet Dune, there are people of colour, Arab, Asian, black, etc. So Dune, much like works in how our world works, in which is the home to the most precious energies known to man, oil, jewels, things like that. In the movie, it's spice, which enables all galactic commercial business and travel. Without that, it brings the galaxy to a standstill. So before I talk about the story, I'd like to bring up the fact that this is the year 10,000. That's 8,000 years ahead of where we are right now. And the reason why I bring this up is because you've all heard the stories of the Terminator, iRobot, and the Matrix, where the robots try to take over from humanity. Well, they don't really tell you that in Dune, but that's exactly what happens in the books. That's where we are at this point. Therefore, you're thrown into a universe that doesn't have any use of AI computers in the way that 99% of sci-fi movies have, or sci-fi stories have. This is where Paul steps up into his greater destiny that could change the fate of the galaxy forever. I won't go too much into spoilers here. Most of you who follow Dune already know what it is, and most of you people who are new to Dune, I would really prefer for you to go and enjoy the film as it is. But through Paul's premonitions, seeing parts of the future, Paul has grown within the line of becoming an actual human being with feelings and emotions and respecting his father's noble teachings, plus at the same time part of his mother's guild, born to be a messiah that Paul is destined to become. Now, George Lucas created his Jedis from this book, from the Bene Gesserit, a religious organization of women spies, nuns, scientists, who use their genetic experiment, galactic political interference, and religions engineering to further their own agenda of ascending the human race. All of the Bene Gesserit are women. To Paul, being the first man is kind of like Neo from the Matrix, where they are betting on him being the one. And if he isn't, then they'll just continue to create another one from the next generation. But you can see the disappointing look on their faces when they realize that the mother has done this and she's the one that's capable of doing that. And I'll explain how their abilities work. So what are their abilities? Their abilities is a power of voice that allows them to control others by merely modulating their vocal tones, aka Jedi mind trick. And the Bene Gesserit could control every muscle and nerve in their body, right down to the individual fibers. In the film's last fight scene, we see the result of this training where Paul is fighting against a trained man who was unrivaled in his fighting abilities. Because of the fight, his premonitions and ability could predict fight paths and kill zones to the body. Paul possesses abilities as a fighter that could not be rivaled by anyone in the known universe with this ability. They can either alter the metabolic state in order to render poisons harmless. This ability was used when potential mothers took their water of life. You even heard of the term in the film truth slayers, which I didn't really explain too well. So these people now are able to sense if someone is telling the truth or not. They can spot if someone is holding something back. For example, when Dr. Ayu was supposed to betray Leto of the Atreides, he felt guilty and anxious about it. Jessica had a conversation with him and sensed that he's holding something back. So that's just part of the ability. The Bene Gesserit are able to control their own fertility as well. So this is where I came into what Jessica was doing, why she produced a son. They can choose whether they get pregnant and also the gender of the child, when and where the order wishes to permit. Now we can see how angry one of the Matrix was when she came to the planet to speak to Jessica, to kind of look over Paul. We saw that this was something that Jessica did on purpose. Now, Jason Momoa's Duncan Idaho, he gets more of a fleshed out part in this film than when compared to the original 80s film, where he doesn't even really get a fight and he's only in a couple of scenes. Here he has a much bigger role. He brings a scent of laughs, gravitas and swagger to the film. And for those of you who might not want him to die, let's just say he might be back, depending on how they'll adapt the second part of the film. Now, speaking of being back, Josh Brolin's Weapons Master and Dave Bautista's villainous Raban feel more like they belong to the sequel rather than in this movie, but it was nice that they kind of spot them in for us to know who they really were. But one of the best performances in the film came from Jessica Ferguson's Paul's mother, Jessica, as I said, as she gets to do a lot more as Lady Jessica and spends a lot more time in the film with her son rather than her partner. Dune actually succeeds in transcending the books more than anything we've seen before it. Not just for Dune, but many sci-fi stories. You actually feel the pages turning of the book while the film is actually happening right in front of your eyes. It's due to the cinematography, the lost visuals, and in my opinion, this film has a bigger scale than anything as I've ever witnessed. The humans are mere ants in comparison to the size of everything around them. You really get that feeling of epicness in every shot. Not seeing this film in IMAX means you'll have lost its scenery, which is why my advice was to see this on the biggest screen possible and on the best sound system you can find. It's an epic experience, one that I have never really seen before since Interstellar. Herbert's own vision corresponds to Villeneuve's own storytelling in every way. The visual echoes what we've seen from the likes of Christopher Nolan and Ridley Scott. The visual technicians, including cinematographer Greg Fraser and editor Joe Walker and production designer Patrice Velmet, create a thrilling sequence that is just jaw-dropping, and the script does a good job with exposition without really trying to push it. You kind of really feel the vibes in every way. I know a lot of people are saying Zendaya didn't really get a big part, but she wasn't really as a character supposed to be in this film too much. So it's a nice way of building that imagination when we get to see her and meet her throughout the film. I must admit, the one thing I didn't agree with was a deviation from Herbert's novel, was the ecologist Kyners. Now this is a gender swap. Now in the books, she's supposed to be Chani's father. So I'm not really sure how they worked that out. Maybe they could say that she was her mother. Probably a bit too late to do now because obviously what happened in the film. So I'm thinking that they're just going to get rid of that altogether and make her father somebody else. But that's something I probably wish they would have kept in the film. Also, my other gripe is this film, guys, should have never been on HBO Max for various reasons. The digital print was available before the film's release, meaning that people saw this on download before it was even out. On top of that, it's going to majorly hurt the film's chances of a part 2, because you want as much money from the box office as possible in order for them to facilitate a sequel. Whereas as everybody says, you know what, I can't be bothered, I'm going to watch it at home or I'm going to download it, that kind of holds that back. And for that reason, you're hurting the film's progress in terms of actually enjoying the film in your own way. So yeah, I would not have made that choice. It's one of the reasons why Chris Nolan has left Warner Brothers. Denis Villeneuve should have made agreements with Warner Brother Media that this was part of at least something that was promised. However, the wait continues to see if this will be the case. We have not had a green light for the sequel yet. But if you're only half interested in sci-fi or Dune, that might be enough to enjoy this one. Dune is designed to be a film seen as epic, with a scope and scale that extends beyond anything we ever seen or the books teach us. The sheer size of the iconic sandworms and ships are all there in all its glory. For a sci-fi fan, you won't find a better experience than this. Guys, I'm giving this a 9.6 out of 10, which actually equals the likes of Snyder Cut and Infinity War from Marvel. That's how good this is. It will go down as an all-time classic. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. As always, I'll speak to you guys in the next one.